Once upon a time, there was a place of carved stone faces. A man with a lantern lay sleeping in a dreamless sleep. The man knew nothing. One day, the man woke up. He rubbed the dried ink caked over his eyes and opened them. Around him, he saw other people stirring, and beyond, a horizon of unbroken darkness. A woman approached the man with the lantern. Her soft hand reached out to him. They had no words. They were a mystery to each other. Suddenly, a monster emerged from the darkness. Its eyes wild with hunger, it attacked. People were no match for the monster. It tore their flesh and crushed their bones between its teeth. Some it even devoured whole. Overcome with terror and grief, the man with the lantern collapsed to the ground. Cold stone noses pushed into his side. There was no escape. But the man did not want to die. Desperately grasping at the cold stone faces, he felt a crack and tore at it with all his might. A piece of stone came free. It was sharp and deadly. The man with the lantern scrambled to his feet, his weapon clutched in his fist. He took a deep breath and roared into the darkness. Somewhere in this place of stone faces, nameless men stand together. They have nothing but the need to survive and a lantern to light their struggles. And that's how Kingdom Death starts. It's a D10 system with a hit location dice, which is based on a D6, where you have no idea where you're at, complete darkness, and your main goal is to survive. The game, very much like Monster Hunter, where you're killing monsters for resources, but also there's almost like a city builder in a sense, because your resources are very limited and you need to use those resources for both the weapons and to build the buildings or to activate things in the building as well. The game is set up into 3 phases. Other than the prologue, which automatically throws you into what the hunt phase is the settlement phase, the hunt phase, and the showdown. The settlement phase is where you take your resources and you try to figure out if you can build weapons, or you can activate buildings that you unlock, or even cards, which are called innovations, to make your characters better, or even to make better things, or to pretty much each card can have an automatic ability or an ability that has a cost to activate. The hunt phase, which is where you go out and through this board, it's a separate board. I should explain that. It's a separate board where it'll tell you where the monster starts, and you progress and you trigger hunt events, which are usually more bad than good. It's to show the progress of day-to-day tracking to get to the monster, but through that process, people could die, you can lose equipment, you can be hurt, or even ambush the monster. Then there's the showdown. The showdown is where you fight the monster. Now, the monster always is going to be level 1 unless you opt to do the higher levels when you have more equipment and better suited unit characters. I say characters because it's kind of what they are up until they die. Then you play another person. That's usually where it starts. This is very much a miniatures board game. All the miniatures you get in the game, you have to build and you have to paint if that's something you're into, or you pay someone else to do it. But that's the idea. You have a survivor's board, where you have a grid of 6 squares where you can put items in. You start off with a cloth and a stone it's called a founding stone, and you have a sheet, which is like your character sheet. You have Hunt XP, which will trigger story events because that means they're getting older. And usually the last one is where they retire, meaning that they don't do any more hunts. just to kind of give you an idea, once a unit is retired, they just kind of sit there in the base. There are units that are very special that when they hit retirement, they no longer exist. They fade into nothingness. And there are events where even it'll say your retired heroes or retired survivors can go on this event or be used for this event and things like that. There are, what is it? I'm trying to remember the attributes. There are attributes which are your movement, your speed, your accuracy, your strength, and evasion, luck, survival, insanity, courage, understanding, hunt XP, which is what I've already explained, and weapon proficiency. Each of those have their own thing. So everybody starts with a movement of 5. You can increase and decrease through events or through getting pretty bad wounds. Getting pretty bad wounds. Speed is your attack speed. So if your speed is 0, but you have a weapon that is a speed of 2, which is the first number on the card, that's how many d10s you get to roll. And if you increase your speed, you get to add more to the attack, your attack roll. Your accuracy is your precision, what you need to hit. That's usually the second number on the, usually the weapon. So if a weapon is a 7 to hit, but you have a accuracy of +2, well, now you just need to roll a 5, and you hit. Strength is your power. Usually, so strength is how much damage you're doing. So if a weapon has a 1, it'll do 1 damage. If you have strength +3, you do 4 damage. Strength is very useful for trying to kill things faster. Then you have evasion. I'm just going to try to go over these as quickly as possible, as how much harder it is to hit you. So if a monster will have an AI card. It'll say it's doing a bite attack, and its bite hits on a 3, but you have an evasion of 2, so it needs to roll a 5 or better. Doesn't roll a 5 or better, misses you. Luck is your critical range. So if you roll a natural 10, or what they call a lantern 10, you automatically crit and you do your damage. So if you have a luck of 2, you need to roll an 8. If you roll an 8, you get a critical, and so forth. Things like that. Survival is your self-preservation, as what they call it, meaning you can activate one of these 3 abilities if you get them through your thing, which is dash, encourage, surge, and dodge. Dash is you move a little bit further. Encourage, you tell somebody to stand up when they get knocked down. Surge, surge is you could attack again. And dodge is if a monster hits you, you could spend a survival to dodge that attack. Maybe it's going to kill you, and you don't want to take that. So the way it's rolled is the monster attacks, it hits, and you roll where it's going to hit you. So if it hits me in the head and I don't want it to hit me in the head, I can spend a survival to dodge that attack. But a lot of times it's me and my friends kind of do it the other way, where it's, hey, the monster rolled a hit. I'm going to spend a survival to dodge it. I don't want to risk getting hit. But really, the first way is the correct way. Then you have your insanity, which is your mental guard. It's your insanity protects you from the environment. Some things will do mental damage, which can kill you if you don't have insanity. So the more insanity you have, the better. I believe if you have 10 or more, you're considered insane, but it doesn't really do anything negative, as far as I can find. There are some weapons which will say, like, you need to be insane to use these weapons. That's fine. Oh, courage and understanding, which is your courage is how brave you are, and your understanding is like your wisdom. As you progress through, you will sometimes get courage or understanding for doing tasks, either failing or passing those tasks, and they later activate events depending on when you triggered that event. Weapon proficiency, when you attack with the weapon and you hit with that weapon against a monster, at the end of the battle you get a weapon experience. You don't, if you in a fight but you never hit anything, you don't get experience for that, and you want the experience because you get specialization, which grants you abilities for having specialization in that weapon, such as the core weapon a lot of people go for is the Fist and Tooth, which is if you if you specialize in it, you stand up at the end of the turn if you get knocked down. And if you're a master, you get +1 luck when attacking with Fist and Tooth. But when you master it, everybody gets the specialization, which is really cool. So if let's say we're all playing together, I specialize in Fist and Tooth, and I get the mastery, everybody in our settlement, everybody who's playing, all the survivors that we have, they all get that specialization, which means, hey, I get to stand up if a monster knocks me down. But if you have a mastery, everybody gets the specialization. If you want to master that weapon, you have to attack with that weapon. And at the end of the fight, you have to designate, hey, I'm getting proficiency for that weapon. First fight is the monster, the White Lion, which is the level 1. There's that. Then there's hit location, the little dice, which will be your waist, your chest, your arms, and your legs, and your head. And I think, because it's a 6-sided die, I forget which one shows up twice. The way the monster works is it has its own AI deck and a hit location deck. You build the deck as indicated by the monster's card. So it'll say it has 6 basics, 1 advance, and then that's it. That would be its AI deck. The rule is everybody plays the monster, or everybody controls the monster, and you usually get an insanity. If you attack yourself, you get 1 insanity. The rule that we came up with to make it easier, because sometimes I'm usually the one closest to all the material to make it easier, is, hey, if the monster's attacking and it's attacking you, you're the one in control of the monster. That way it's just easier, and it just makes it easier. But there is technically a rule. If we ever come up against a rule that rules against another rule, there is a rule that's called the rule of death, meaning that it will always favor the monster or the game than the player. So if, let's say, I have an ability that says the first time a monster would attack me, I get to dodge for free, but then there's a rule that the monster has that says your survivors cannot dodge when within while they're adjacent to each other. Well, I mean, that kind of tells you one thing, like, you can't dodge, but I have an ability that says I get to dodge for free. Like, I just do it. So we would do the rule of death, saying, no, the monster's ability just negates that. Once a character dies from a severe injury, they're dead. There's no coming back. There are sub rules in this game which you can use, which is I think it was called like hero mode, where you choose, each person chooses a character and they're immortal. So if they die, they don't actually die. They just pass out and go back to the settlement. I thought that was kind of cool. I kind of made up a rule if I ever wanted to play it that way, where if you die, you don't technically die. A survivor and the settlement dies in your place, meaning you're extracting their soul in payment of your soul. So I call it like God mode almost. So as long as you have survivors in your settlement and you die, they die in your place. just to kind of offset that game mode. So I might want to do that, especially later on. That's kind of like the opening and an idea of what the game is. It is a cooperative board game. Everybody has to make a group decision. No one person can decide what everybody does. Throughout the game, you will trigger other monsters, and the book will tell you how to do that. So there are story events, which always trigger. There's an innovation deck, which will give you technologies to discover, new abilities, and then milestones, which are, through either the settlement phase or through your character's progression. There is a dice table, which you will be using on almost everything. Adam Poots, the creator of the game, really wanted the game to be, hey, we're playing this as a group. We want this game to be always constantly doing something. And I really don't want to sit and argue about a rule for like 2 hours. And then I don't want to go over all the rules. I just kind of want to glance over everything. There are fighting arts, which are technically feats if you're kind of familiar with RPGs such as D&D, Pathfinder. You get those through progression of fighting specific boss monsters, or accomplishing, something crazy in an event. Disorders sound just what it is. There is, let's say, you're fighting a monster and there's a pool of blood, and you want to activate that pool of blood because you want to drink from it, because it says, hey, if you roll a perfect 10, you get immortality. But if you roll any lower, you get a disorder. And usually the disorder is a hemophilia. Anytime you or another survivor gets a bleed token, you get knocked down. You can only have up to a max of 3 disorders. If you get a new disorder, it replaces the disorder on your thing. Disorders can be cured. Just depends on if you have the innovation or a settlement location that lets you do it, or maybe even during some events. Same thing with the fighting arts. You get 3 fighting arts. You can replace them. If you get another fighting art, you can choose not to replace it. There are secret fighting arts, which are just randomly gained. Some of them are usually through fights. If you have 5 or more bleed tokens, you die. You can get attribute modifier tokens, which you get during the showdown phase or even through the hunt phase, which increase or decrease a stat for that phase. Like I said, I don't want to get into everything. That's just kind of an outline of the game. To me, one of the biggest draws is the artwork and the way the game plays. I am thinking about buying their simulator and playing that and kind of showing that off. It's like $20 right now, which isn't bad. And it's the core game and it's still in the works. It's like alpha still. But the last time I looked at it, looked really cool. So I might do that, show it off, and probably give like a better view, especially for $20. Maybe someone really likes it and they're like, oh man, I want to play that game. As you could buy a 4-pack for $80, which you can give the keys to 3 other people. That way you guys can play all together. That's kind of my overview of the game. Hopefully this is a little more in-depth, better in-depth of the game than my 10-minute rant of me talking just about how I like the game. But let me know what you thought about down in the comments. Any feedback is always positive. Positive feedback on these videos, always grateful. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe. And yeah, thanks for checking me out. And as always, be safe out there, and I'll see you around.